Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
This is Bloomberg Businessweek with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
Yeah, we definitely follow him a lot. And I got to say, a day doesn't seem to go by, it seems, without some sort of headline that is about Elon Musk or something in his world or a tweet, David. Safe to say that. And that includes, of course, what happens on Twitter, now X, which he bought back in 2022.
Back in 2020, it feels like, this has been an odyssey going through all of this, and our two guests know that very well. Kate Conger, who's a technology reporter for the New York Times, Ryan Mack, also with the Times, and their new book is called Character Limit: How Elon Musk Destroyed Twitter. And you've chronicled this so well. And Kate, let me start with you. There's this line in the book, kind of a nod to T.S. Eliot. It may end with a bang or a whimper or an improbable success, but what is clear is that Musk has destroyed the platform. Going back to the beginning, this was a guy who loved it, clearly loved Twitter, maybe had some dreams of improving the thing. Was it always preordained that this was going to be a mess, or was there any glimmer of hope from the outset that this could kind of fundamentally change for the better, this social media platform?
I think there was a lot of fear about Musk coming in and how things were going to go under his leadership. But I think there were a lot of people who did have that hope. Even some employees at Twitter thought, okay, maybe he's going to be able to do for us what he's done for SpaceX and Tesla. And, what we really wanted to show in the book is that Twitter was mismanaged under the previous management. It was not a well-run company, and there were a lot of problems going on. And so I think a lot of employees saw that and thought, okay, maybe we're finally going to cut through some of this red tape that's prevented us from doing the things that we need to be doing. And then, obviously it was got pretty messy from there.
And then the story goes different. Ryan, come on in, because I do wonder,
Sure.
Elon is written about, talked about so much. We've got a podcast here at Bloomberg devoted to it. We have a bingo card when it comes to earnings. Walter Isaacson just wrote a big book, an authorized biography of him. So when you guys thought about how you wanted to approach it, how did you do it on someone that is so talked about and so written?
Well, I want to know what's on that bingo card first.
You can find it online.
Yeah. Well, we embarked on this book. We were both reporters at the Times, and we had done almost daily stories on this takeover. And we were still finding that we couldn't get all of our reporting into these stories, just insane details. One day we heard, he cut janitorial services. There was no more toilet paper in the bathroom. Like one day he wasn't paying rent. And we just felt like there had to be a bigger kind of place to put these anecdotes and these pieces together. The Isaacson book was good for Elon's perspective and telling his side of the story.
And he cooperated.
And he cooperated for, I think, 2 years. And we use that as a resource. It's good to have that and see that and see what Elon wants to have out there, essentially. This part of the book is for the other side, for the employees, for the executives that he might have screwed over. That kind of perspective. We talked to more than 100 people for this book. And I think we did it justice. So, yeah.
He's somebody who so clearly seems stretched thin. He has all of these businesses that he's either founded or got majority stakes and then taken over. And he would want me to say that, not say that. But I'm kind of curious of how involved he is in the day-to-day at this stage. So obviously I see him tweeting all the time. He's still doing that, but you mentioned cutting janitorial services. Does he have any kind of managerial apparatus around him? What is the kind of Elon Musk enterprise like? Either of you can take that, but
He really likes to keep it small. He really likes to be involved in the details, and there's so many moments that we came across in reporting the book where we were just kind of shocked, honestly, by the level of detail he wanted to be involved with things. There was a point where he's taking out or putting in an Oxford comma and something, and
some of the ad copy,
and complaining about the comma use in the copy that's going to go in the App Store, and arguing over pixel placement on the screen and, the way the metrics, the retweets, the likes are going to look. He's so involved in every little detail. And so I think
Is that a bad thing, though, necessarily? Like you think about some of the tech disruptors, innovators, right? That they're so involved in how something looks and how it's packaged and how it goes out.
At SpaceX and at Tesla, there's
and at SpaceX, you're shooting people up into, or, missiles and rockets, and you want to make sure you get it right.
And he's hired this pretty robust ecosystem around him at those places. And what we've heard from people there is, he'll dip in if there's a problem, he'll take care of it very intensely and then he'll leave, and it kind of operates on its own. Twitter was not built that way. These were not his people. These were not people he trusted. In fact, he thought a lot of them were corrupt or inept, and that's why he started to cut. But he didn't have that system around him, so he kind of hyper-focused on this problem and kind of made it worse for him as he kind of got stuck in the details.
Kate, you brought this up a minute ago, and that is, this is a company that had a lot of problems before he took over. Why was that the case? Like, if you look at it in complement with Facebook or other sites, why did it stall out? It seemed to stagnate and stall out in terms of advertiser money and growth. Is that strictly a managerial issue? What accounts for it? What left it in the kind of state it was in when he took it over?
I think there's a couple of things. I think one of the things that held Twitter back from sort of growing at a Facebook level rate is that Twitter always kind of tried to be more privacy protective for its users, more open to different types of speech. And, advertisers are skittish about that. They don't want to be placed alongside some of these famous harassment campaigns that Twitter had back in the day.
It's gotten much better.
It's, it's always a struggle.
I mean, Twitter famously allows porn.
Right. They
something
allow adult content,
right.
And they also wanted to protect user privacy. And so they did a lot less ad targeting than Facebook did. And so advertisers didn't find it as valuable. But I think over time, we also saw Jack Dorsey, one of the co-founders and the CEO for a long time, become really disillusioned with the business side altogether and just kind of throw up his hands and walk away from it a little bit. And so, I think the company suffered at that point from neglect. And, it got into a position where it was ripe for a takeover like this.
What was going on, Kate, behind the scenes when, of course, Elon came out, like he was secretly buying shares, made the offer, and then was very quick about well, maybe I'm not so interested, right? And then there was legal action. And eventually Twitter was kind of basically forced the deal. Did they have to at that point? And you talk about the business was not great anyway, right? Did they kind of almost have no choice? What was going on behind the scenes? Why they forced it?
Yeah, so when Elon first came into the stock, there was this big effort among the executives and the board to sort of bring him into the fold, get him a seat on the board. And so he has this crazy meeting where he flew out to San Jose and they rented an Airbnb. And it's him and Parag Agrawal, the CEO at the time, and Brett Taylor.
There's donkeys around the Airbnb.
Right, they're sitting down to this weird dinner in this Airbnb next to the airport. So they tried really hard to bring him into the fold. And that, it didn't work. He likes to be in total control. And then, it's this really heartbreaking decision, I think, that certainly the board struggled with and a lot of the executives struggled with, of needing to sell, being sort of forced to sell. They had to do right by their shareholders, but thinking, do we really have to sell to this guy?
Is there anybody? Where's the White Knight?
Yes.
Jack Dorsey, where are you?
Well, Ryan, on that point, there has been so much of a sense this could be this kind of utopian place, this town square, or a place where free speech would flourish. And there's this moment, I think, where Jack Dorsey says, I don't know if it's to Elon Musk or it's just in the water, this can't exist as a company. If it's going to, if we're going to realize that vision, it can't be this kind of standard for-profit company. Was that something into which Elon Musk ever bought, or was there ever any notion that he was going to kind of embrace some sort of new kind of entity?
They shared text messages about that, and I think Jack also talked about it becoming a protocol, something that isn't reliant on advertising, for example. But I don't know if it was something that Musk actually believed in or was just lip service. He also talked about building a crypto-based social network. This is one of his ideas before he actually bought Twitter. He was talking about it with Kimball Musk, his brother. But he switches on and off ideas all the time. I think that's a common theme throughout the book, where he's kind of flying by the seat of his pants. And one day he believes in something, the next day he doesn't, and then he's back on. So that's a common theme that we see throughout. Yeah.
What was kind of the most revealing as you guys went through this process? Because as we said, there was so much reported on it. What did you, Kate, some of the stories that also came out that you were surprised about?
Oh, gosh. There's so many little things in this book that were surprising. And I think, even
it's not that Elon has another child, because there's just a lot of children.
There's,
we have a fun story on that one in the book. Yeah, we can talk about that. Yeah.
That is there.
I think there's just you think it's crazy, you sort of ambiently know that, and then you get into the details, and there's just so many little things that are just like, oh my God. And I think there was a point where Ryan and I were working on the book, and he was reporting the section on Twitter Blue, which was Musk's plan to sell verification checks.
I do kind of miss my check. I'm not going to pay for it, but I kind of miss it.
I do miss it too. But, he kept interrupting me over and over again and just being like, you're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe this. And I did it. I mean, it was just the craziest schemes that Musk and his cohort were coming up with of, comparing a verification check mark to buying a luxury handbag, and that it was going to be this status symbol that people were willing to spend a lot of money on. And, I will open my wallet for fashion, but not so much for a check mark. I was like, I don't think you understand.
No, I don't have one.
I haven't paid for it. I still have mine. He gave it back.
Ryan got his back.
You got yours back.
I don't know how.
That's a status symbol.
I also was suspended for a little bit. So.
Yeah, Ryan was kicked off. Now he's verified again.
You've lived it.
Yeah.
All the ups and downs.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to continue. We're going to do a little bit of news, but Ryan, 30 seconds. I mean, do you feel like Elon has any regrets at having bought it at this point?
I think he said he's had regrets about paying that much, right?
Yeah.
He knows he overpaid, but at the end of the day, he got his favorite toy. This is like a billionaire buying a yacht or a soccer team. This is the thing he coveted the most, and he owns it now, and he's the most followed user. So.
Well, we're going to continue with this conversation because I am curious about what you guys think comes next at this point, because I don't think the Twitter story, right, is done at this point. It's a great business school case study, but it's still being written. We're going to continue with Kate Conger, technology reporter at the New York Times. So is Ryan Mack. Their new book that is out, Character Limit, How Elon Musk Destroyed Twitter.
Ryan has a tattoo of it on his arm.
Do you really?
Maybe it's temporary.
It may be temporary tattoo.
Yeah.
More to come. This is Bloomberg.
David Gura in for Tim Stenovec with Carol Massar on Bloomberg Businessweek on Bloomberg Radio, talking about Character Limit, How Elon Musk Destroyed Twitter, a new book by Kate Conger and Ryan Mack, both tech reporters for the New York Times. Continue our conversation with them. I mentioned earlier he had this real affection for Twitter. It's something that got him into trouble, financial trouble, many times before. I mean, I think really vividly he got into trouble with the SEC. He tweeted out earlier, before all of this happened, that he had the money to buy Twitter effectively, and there was supposed to be, as a result of that, this Twitter sitter, somebody who was there to kind of approve or vet the
a supposed lawyer.
A supposed lawyer.
Yeah.
That never happened. I guess why I ask is I'm wondering sort of like, has his use of the platform changed over the years? And I think back of kind of pivotal moments in the site's evolution, COVID chief among them, when I think a lot of people, handful of people, I should say, like changed their tack or their attitude on it. How did it change him? How did his use of Twitter change over the course of its existence?
So it was really interesting, actually. We went back through his Twitter archives and started reading his posts from the very beginning.
My God, how long did that take?
It took a while. No, it took a while.
Our brains are a little rotten at this point. So.
But it's remarkable how normal his early tweets are. I mean, he tweets things like, "Oh, I'm going to the ice rink with my kids," and like, getting a sandwich, going to SpaceX, like just really normal posts. And it was just jarring to go from what he posts now back to those sort of, much more tame days. But yeah, I mean, he's just really intensified his use of the platform over time. I think he's learned that he can use it to push back on narratives about him and kind of spar with the media, and to promote his businesses. He's talked about how he can just promote Tesla using his Twitter account. He doesn't need to pay for traditional advertising. And he's just gotten more enmeshed in the platform, I think, as time has gone on, where he gets all of his news and all of his information from X and from the kinds of accounts that he follows, which are often on the verge of conspiratorial.
Well, you say that, I think like something that stood out to me is how this used to be like his outlet to normalcy or reality. I don't know
yes.
if I'm paraphrasing what you said in the piece, but this used to be like for a guy who is very wealthy and very busy and kind of closeted in this very tight security, it was a means of being a normal person or having access to normal people. That really seems to have changed.
Yeah.
What access to normal is, I guess, has changed.
Yeah, well, and I think setting aside a lot of the things that Elon is actually saying, I think one of the things I find so fascinating about him as a tech executive is that he has tried to stay like normal and relatable to people in a way that, a Zuckerberg, for instance, is not. He's blanketed by layers and layers of PR and lawyers and, I don't think he's very often hopping, onto his comments on Instagram and replying himself without running it by someone, but Elon has always been very raw and very real on Twitter.
And gets away with a lot
and
of it
gets
that
away
no
with
other
it.
publicly traded CEO would get away with.
We look at
It's
it this
staggering.
week. He's just joking. A lot of when he says something, he goes too far. He's just joking. And he has the ability to delete it and move on. And there's very little repercussion for him.
Right. And you mentioned the SEC situation earlier. I think the fine that he received in that case was $20 million, which for him, it's probably a sandwich.
It's a parking ticket.
Yeah.
You guys, the title of the book is How Elon Musk Destroyed Twitter. Ryan, do we know? Is Twitter destroyed, or can it? Can it go through rehab and come out on the other side?
The subtitle's meant to be provocative. It's meant to generate a discussion. I think on the name alone, though, he's changed it from Twitter to X. So Twitter's gone. We still call it Twitter, but that's, I think, a reflex.
Or we say X, formerly known as Twitter.
Exactly.
It's cumbersome. It's not comfortable yet.
The artist formerly known as Prince.
Correct.
Correct. But we also, you look at it from a financial perspective. He bought it at $44 billion. He's now valuing it internally himself at $19 billion. Fidelity had marked it down to $12 billion.
Yeah.
That's a financial disaster. That's not a good place to be, as a businessman. So,
well, on that note, I wanted to ask you about the reputation he has as a good businessman. And I was reading your book in compliment. I just read our colleagues, Max Chapkin wrote a book about Peter Thiel, and kind of we get to revisit this era when he's when it's like X versus Confinity, this kind of PayPal predecessor, and he's really motivated by kind of peak and rivalry. What conclusions can we draw just about him as a businessman? Yes, we can kind of give him props for inventing this or that, or getting into electric vehicles or rocketry or whatever. But on the merits as a businessman, what did you come away from thinking
I think
about
if we're judging him by the merits of capitalism, he is one of the greatest of all time. We're talking about a man worth $250 billion. He's grown two massive companies in SpaceX and Tesla. He's building more companies. But just because you're an expert in rocketry or vehicle development doesn't necessarily make you the best person to run a social media company. And I think that kind of hubris that he took into Twitter really hampered him and has affected him where he's not listening to other people. He thinks he's the best. He's the alpha. He's the person that should be listened to. And that has really hurt him as he's tried to take over this company.
Yeah, an active investor, right? I think about Kathy Wood early in on Elon Musk and certainly Tesla, but described him akin to Thomas Edison of our time in terms of his ability to create and really change things. So Kate, I don't know, is there something Elon can do with Twitter X going forward? Or I don't know, how do you guys think about it as you report on him? Does he want this to be a success? What does he want? Do we know?
He's always said that he doesn't care about the finances of this deal. He says, I don't care about making money. He just wants it as an ideological platform, basically.
Yeah.
And so I think he feels...
I want the old Twitter.
Right.
I want it so when news is
So
breaking,
nostalgic,
it's the place to go because everybody jumps on. Media, we've loved it, right? But it was such a cool place to go, and now it's not. So
right.
much.
Well, and I think, he's really made it into something that's very catered to his interests, especially now that he's more into politics, right? He's convinced Trump to come back onto the platform, which Trump was very resistant to for a long time.
Well, he's had his own.
Right, he's had his own thing. And Musk has gotten Trump to do Twitter Spaces with him, to talk on the platform. He just did another one the other night about his crypto business. And so I think Musk views that as quite a success. And I think the more he uses it for political gain, and if he sees that come to fruition, I think that that'll be really rewarding for him.
Final thought from you, Ryan?
Yeah, I don't know where this goes, actually. It's interesting to watch him flail every day, I guess. Today he tweeted a fake bomb threat, essentially. And this is a man that has 200 million followers on the platform. He controls it. So I don't know. Tomorrow, I don't know what it'll bring. So
Test that relative impunity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bottom line, can we get your tattoo?
We'll
Of course,
tattoos,
we'll get you guys
yes,
some tattoos.
Tattoo
You got to put them somewhere visible, though.
Yes, we will.
As a billboard.
On Twitter, you can tweet it. On X, sorry.
Are you going to do that, David?
Maybe.
We'll see.
Congratulations,
Thank you
guys.
both.
Thank you.
New York Times reporters Kate Conger and Ryan Mack. The book Character Limit: How Elon Musk Destroyed Twitter.